This one is the Stovax Vogue Midi T Highline. I wanted this one because it's exciting. It's got the sort of tall glass and the log store and all that sort of stuff. So it's, you know, a bit more interesting than some. We've got a nice big log store. The log store is also sort of open from the side. So obviously we've got this in a fireplace, but if you had this completely freestanding in the room, I quite like that the logs would be exposed. You
could see them at the
on
side.
the side. Yeah, I just think it looked really. It's just more interesting. Obviously, you can get stoves with side glass, but and it seems obvious. I haven't really seen a stove with side log store. We've also got. I mean, this is a sort of style cue here, because this is actually the handle, and to shut it, if you just sort of slam it. Which I think it's just quite nicely thought out. I'm not a big fan of all the sort of sprung loaded doors that sort of shut themselves, and because they do it slowly, or they're just it's a bit of a gimmick.
It's not very nice when you're trying to load a stove, a door that's coming
it's wanting
towards you.
Yeah, it's just they're not my favourite. But what I do like about them is the fact that I can just, you know, let go and they properly close themselves. They don't just close and then I have to sort of mechanically do something. And this doesn't have the closing itself, which is a little bit annoying, so that's good. But it still slams shut. And that's making a little bit of a clang because at the moment the log store hasn't got any logs in it, so there's some thinner bits of metal that are just sort of a bit undamped.
Do you think the handle's going to get hot?
I don't know. It would seem plausible that yes, it will get hot, but
does it come with gloves?
We'll find out.
Let's find out.
And it's also got this. It says Stovax on it, which obviously some people will like, others will be thinking, no, I don't want a brand name on the front. But it's not too obvious because it's shiny. You don't really. Oh, it's got little notches. So full bit. That's quite cool. I quite like the notches because if you aren't an experienced user, or if your husband or your wife uses it and then you've got to, like, you don't really touch it and somebody says, oh, you know, just set the air to the, you know, if it's got a notch, it's just like, I'll set it to the second notch. I quite like that. So that's, and it's quite nicely finished. It feels nice. I like keeping packaging. So I'll sort of slide that off in a very delicate way because then I can put it back on.
Never. Just sit in a corner somewhere.
Yeah, probably. But I'll have kept the packaging. That's important too.
Yeah.
I've still got my original iPhone box and every other iPhone box since then. Well, it's just, you know, fairly standard but quite nicely finished. We obviously have they do this stove as standard in a wood only version. I've gone for the multi-fuel version in part because I never go for the multi-fuel version. I always want, this is the way the industry is going. We're moving towards wood, it's renewable, it's better for the environment, it's greener, there's all sorts of positives. But lots of people do still want a multi-fuel stove, so I thought I'll see how this one behaves in its multi-fuel setup. And then in here, I love it when you get toys. Oh, it's my favourite. It's like Christmas. We've got a pronger.
Official term.
Yeah, official prong. Some
Prong two.
other hooker. That's
You've got loads of toys.
I mean, this is definitely already one of the most exciting stoves to unpack, but also sort of.
You've got loads of presents.
I mean, they're wrapped up like presents. What is this like a
Is that a blanking? Can you put it off the back and you'd put that on the top? Is that-
yeah, you can have a. It comes. Pass me that. It's more. So that is a cast iron that it was in the top of the stove, and obviously I put the pipe in, but that was just sort of some sort of blanking plate to make the top look nice. And we've got. Do you think this is direct air? There's a load of bolts. There's a little angle bracket. Now, I would imagine this is like just a little bit of bent angle with two holes in it. In Scotland, it was always, I don't know whether it still is, but it was always the rule that stoves had to be bolted down to the floor. And so I'm thinking that might be to do with that. Oh, look at this. Proper Stovax gloves. Obviously, they're not quite as good as the tortoise ones, so they say Stovax on the side of them, and they're black. So not bad, but whether they're quite our level, Oh, this is the sad bit in Christmas where the only thing left to play with is the instruction manual. Instruction book, a warranty registration. Again, I might keep that packaging. That's important. Why do you roll your
I
eyes?
was going to say, can you hear my eyes rolling?
I want to find out this thing.
How's your hooker?
My hooker isn't working. Oh, there, okay. There we go. So, the only problem with the hooker is if you put the ash pan in too far, you can't get the hooker out. It's quite nicely finished. It's got a sort of rubber, I don't know whether this is like silicone so it won't melt, but it feels nice. And then there's a hole in the side. Oh, clever. That is a riddling tool for shaking the ashes down.
It's nice, isn't it? Because you get a cleaner line because you don't have something sticking out. But if you're the sort of person who loses things, that could be quite annoying.
It's nicely thought out. Lots of stoves where they come sort of designed as wood burners and then you can get an add-in sort of multi-fuel setup. The vast majority of those are, if I say it politely, utter rubbish. Somebody's got a bit of metal, cut some little grated holes in it and chucked it in there and said, oh, that's a multi-fuel kit, and then charged you 200 quid. This actually has a little section machined out of the side of the stove, a proper well thought out tool that latches into that. It has a riddling grate. It does seem to stick a little bit, but maybe that's just, it needs a little jiggle or something, who knows. The finishing of this stove is quite nice, isn't it? I like this sort of steel strip sort of echo, and the fact that these are way like. Obviously, we've seen lots of tools in how do I escape from the hooker comment? The operating tools for stoves are very often naff, poorly thought out, a bent bit of metal, a lump of cast. This is just thought out, nice rubber handle on the end of it. It's you know, little shiny metal. It sort of all works together. I sort of, if I had one design improvement for you, Stovax, if you're watching, make a little thing where these slot into the door.
So you don't lose them.
Because I know not all of these are sold with log stores, but if you buy the log store, that minor little addition, and I can't see any way of it happening on this one, so I'm sure you don't do it, but I genuinely think one little pouch that these just drop into would make the stove. Even without that, the stove is obviously very nicely finished. I'm really interested in how this one's going to run. I've got the MIDI T, which is this much taller glass version. These Stovax have been... some people struggle with smoke coming into the room with Stovaxes. That's become a sort of mentioned concern. And so I've bought the one that statistically will be one of the worst, to see whether it is that bad. Most of the time it's down to poor use or an issue with the installation. It's not that often that it's all the stove's fault. I've also put this on my chimney that isn't particularly good at drawing. This is the worst chimney that I have. I've got one really, really good one. This one's lower down the roof in a more difficult spot. It's not as tall. So I've really deliberately tried to make this whole thing a little bit set up to negatively affect the stove, so it will reveal just how bad it is. If it works perfectly with my use, then based on how not great this chimney is and the version I've gone for, I think we can be pretty confident it's down to user error. If when I try and light this, there's just smoke coming into the room and it's a complete nightmare, I will tell you in the review. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again in, we'll make a video about how to disassemble all of this for servicing and maintenance, and we'll also make the review. Thanks a lot.